My sister sold our childhood home without telling me, so I bought it back and locked her out forever. Growing up in that little blue house on Maple Street felt like living inside a snow globe where everything was perfect and untouchable. The creaky third step that always announced when someone was sneaking downstairs for midnight snacks became our secret code. Every scratch on the hardwood floors told a story of roller skates and dropped toys, while the height marks on the kitchen doorframe tracked our growth through summers that seemed to last forever. When our parents passed away 5 years ago in that horrible car accident, we inherited the house together as equal owners. My sister and I had always been close, or so I believed, sharing everything from clothes to secrets to dreams about the future. The house represented more than just property to me. It was our sanctuary, our memory vault, our connection to everything we had lost. After the funeral, we both agreed the house should stay in the family. My sister lived across the country pursuing her career, while I remained nearby, visiting the house regularly to maintain it and keep the garden Mom loved so much. Those weekend visits became my ritual of healing, pulling weeds while tears mixed with soil under my fingernails. The property taxes and maintenance costs were manageable when split between us. We had established a system where I handled the day-to-day upkeep, while she contributed her share of expenses through monthly transfers. Everything seemed to be working smoothly, or at least that's what I told myself when red flags started appearing. She began missing her payments more frequently, always with elaborate excuses about delayed paychecks or unexpected expenses. Her communication became sporadic, sometimes going weeks without responding to my texts about house-related matters. When I suggested we discuss the situation more seriously, she would deflect with jokes or change the subject entirely. The first real warning came when she started asking strange questions about the house's current market value. She disguised her inquiries as casual conversation, wondering aloud about neighborhood developments and recent sales. My stomach would twist with unease, but I pushed those feelings aside, convincing myself she was just making small talk. 3 months ago, she visited unexpectedly, claiming she wanted to spend time reminiscing in our childhood home. We walked through every room together, and she seemed unusually sentimental, touching surfaces and staring at walls with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. She took photos of everything, which she explained as wanting to preserve memories for her own children someday. That weekend felt different somehow, charged with an energy I couldn't identify. She kept asking about my financial situation, my job stability, my future plans in ways that felt more like an interrogation than sisterly concern. When she hugged me goodbye, it lasted longer than usual, and I caught something in her eyes that looked almost like guilt. The following weeks passed without any unusual communication from her. She resumed her pattern of sporadic contact, and I fell back into my routine of maintaining the house and paying the bills. The mortgage had been paid off years ago, so the only ongoing expenses were utilities, taxes, and occasional repairs. 2 weeks ago, I drove to the house for my regular Saturday morning visit. The routine was sacred to me, arriving early with coffee and spending hours tending to Mom's rose garden while processing my thoughts and emotions. As I turned onto Maple Street, I noticed unfamiliar cars parked outside and people walking around the property with clipboards. My heart rate accelerated as I approached, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A woman in a business suit was directing others to measure rooms and take photographs. When I parked and approached the group, the woman introduced herself as a real estate agent and explained they were conducting a final walkthrough before the closing. The words hit me like physical blows. Closing, sale, new owners. My legs felt weak as I tried to process what she was telling me. According to the agent, the house had been sold 3 days earlier, and the new owners were taking possession the following week. She seemed confused by my presence and asked if I was there on behalf of the seller. My hands shook as I explained that I was half owner of the property and had no knowledge of any sale. The agent's expression shifted from confusion to concern as she checked her paperwork. According to her documents, my sister had provided documentation showing she had full ownership of the property. She had forged documents or somehow manipulated the legal paperwork to exclude me entirely. The betrayal cut deeper than losing our parents had. At least their death was an accident, a cruel twist of fate that nobody could control. This was deliberate, calculated, and executed by someone I had trusted completely. My sister had stolen not just property, but our family's legacy, our shared history, our connection to everything we had loved together. I spent the rest of that day in a fog of disbelief and rage. Phone calls to my sister went straight to voicemail. Text messages remained unanswered. I contacted a lawyer immediately, but the legal processes would take months to resolve. And by then, the house would belong to strangers who would probably tear down the garden and paint over the height marks. The new owners were a young couple with 2 small children. They seemed nice enough, excited about their first home purchase and completely unaware of the drama surrounding the sale. I couldn't bring myself to burden them with the knowledge that they had unknowingly become part of a family betrayal. They had acted in good faith and deserved to enjoy their new home. That night, I lay awake developing a plan that seemed impossible, but felt necessary. The house had sold for significantly less than its market value, probably because my sister needed to move quickly to avoid detection. If I could secure financing quickly enough, I might be able to make the new owners an offer they couldn't refuse. The next morning, I called the real estate agent and asked if she thought the new owners might be interested in a quick sale for a substantial profit. She seemed surprised by the question, but agreed to make some discreet inquiries. My proposal was simple. I would offer them $50,000 above what they had paid, giving them an instant profit for essentially no work. Meanwhile, I liquidated every asset I could access. My retirement accounts, savings, investments, even my car went toward raising the necessary funds. I took out a mortgage against my own home and applied for every loan I could qualify for. The financial risk was enormous, but the alternative was losing our childhood home forever. The young couple was initially hesitant, understandably confused by such an unusual situation. However, when I explained that the house had deep family significance and I was willing to pay well above market value, they began to consider the proposal. They had found the house through a rushed sale and hadn't had time to become emotionally attached to it. Within a week, we had reached an agreement. They would sell the house back to me for their original purchase price, plus $50,000. The transaction would close as quickly as possible, allowing them to take their unexpected profit and find another home while giving me back the property that should never have been sold. The paperwork moved faster than I had dared to hope. My lawyer worked overtime to ensure everything was legal and binding. The young couple remained gracious throughout the process, even expressing sympathy for my situation. They used their profit as a down payment on a larger house in a different neighborhood, so everyone benefited from the arrangement. 2 weeks later, I stood in the kitchen of my childhood home, holding the new deed with my name as the sole owner. The house was mine again, but the victory felt hollow. The trust between my sister and me had been shattered so completely that I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. She finally returned my calls after the sale had been completed. Her voice was cold and defensive as she tried to justify her actions. She claimed she had been facing financial difficulties and needed her share of the inheritance immediately. She said she had tried to reach me, but couldn't wait for legal processes to unfold. Every excuse felt like another knife wound. She had stolen from me, lied to me, and betrayed everything our family had stood for. The house had been worth enough to solve both our financial problems if we had sold it legitimately and split the proceeds. Instead, she had chosen deception and greed over honesty and family loyalty. I listened to her explanations without interrupting, feeling my heart harden with each word. When she finally finished, I told her about buying the house back and what it had cost me financially. Her silence stretched so long, I thought the call had disconnected. When she finally spoke, her voice was small and shocked. She asked if she could come see the house, maybe talk things through, and find a way to repair our relationship. The request made my stomach churn with a mixture of anger and sadness. This was the person who had shared my childhood, who had cried with me at our parents' funeral, who had promised we would always be there for each other. I told her no. The house was mine now, purchased legally and at great personal cost. She had forfeited any claim to it when she chose to betray our family. She was no longer welcome on the property, and I would not hesitate to call the police if she showed up uninvited. The conversation ended with her crying and begging for forgiveness. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to find a way back to the relationship we had once shared. But the larger part of me recognized that some betrayals are too deep to forgive, some trust too broken to rebuild. I changed all the locks on the house the next day. The old keys that had been copied and shared over the years no longer worked. Only I had access now, which felt both empowering and lonely. The house was secure, but it was also isolated from the family connections that had made it special. Months have passed since then, and I have not spoken to my sister. She has sent letters, emails, and text messages, but I have not responded to any of them. Some people might think I am being too harsh, but they do not understand the depth of what was stolen from me. It was not just property or money. It was trust, family bonds, and the sanctity of shared memories. The house feels different now, both mine and not mine at the same time. I have continued maintaining Mom's garden, and the roses are blooming more beautifully than ever. The height marks on the doorframe remain untouched, a testament to the children we once were. But the innocence of those measurements has been lost, replaced by the harsh reality of what we became. I do not regret buying the house back, despite the financial strain it has caused. Working extra hours and cutting expenses has become my new normal. But at least I am working to preserve something meaningful rather than watching it disappear. The house represents continuity, a bridge between past and future that almost got destroyed by greed. Sometimes, I wonder what our parents would think about the situation. They raised us to value family above all else, to support each other through difficult times. We had their example of love and loyalty, yet somehow my sister chose a different path. Maybe they would be disappointed in both of us, her for the betrayal and me for the unforgiving response. But I cannot imagine any other choice I could have made. Some actions have consequences that cannot be undone, some words that cannot be taken back. My sister crossed a line that I did not know existed until she stepped over it. The relationship we had before can never be recovered, because it was based on assumptions about trust and loyalty that turned out to be false. The house is quiet now, in ways it never was during our childhood. No footsteps on the stairs, no laughter echoing through the halls, no siblings sharing secrets in whispered conversations. It is preserved exactly as it was, but it is also empty in ways that furniture and memories cannot fill. I have considered selling the house myself, using the proceeds to start fresh somewhere else. But every time I imagine strangers living in these rooms, I know I could never do it. This house is my responsibility now, my burden and my treasure. It will stay in the family as long as I am alive to protect it. The garden continues to grow, the seasons continue to change, and life continues to move forward. But some things remain frozen in time, preserved exactly as they were before betrayal changed everything. The house stands as a monument to what we lost and what we chose to save, a reminder that some prices are worth paying and some bridges are meant to be burned.